Welcome to today's class of chemical coordination and integration. In this chapter, we have come to know about that the coordination and the control in the body of an organism, especially if we talk about human beings, can be brought about by two systems. One is the neural control, that is nervous system, and another one is the endocrine system or the hormonal control. And if you have gone through my previous video in which I have indicated the positions in our body where our primary that is your endocrine glands are located, which are associated with the secretion of hormones. Now hormones are chemical messengers which are poured directly into the bloodstream and is carried by means of blood to the target cells where they function. If it is a protein hormone, then their function is different by means of some secondary messenger which we have seen it or which we have studied it in our that is how the mechanism of hormone takes place or the hormone action takes place in our body. And if it is a steroidal hormone, then it directly enters into the cell cytoplasm where there are some intracellular receptors where it binds to it, and then it directly affects the genetic material or the DNA and the portion of the DNA which is important at that particular point of time to be transcribed. It is transcribed and then it comes to the cytoplasm where the essential protein in the form of hormone or the enzyme takes place that results into the physiological changes which are brought into that target cell. So that is a gist of the endocrine system, its hormones and its mechanism of action. Today we are going to concentrate upon a very important part of the endocrine system which is called the hypothalamus. Now hypothalamus is a part of the forebrain, human brain. We will be discussing it in the nervous system chapter where we will see that the forebrain parts are there. So in that there is a portion of the brain which is called as your diencephalon. Now the diencephalon has various parts, and that is the basal surface of the diencephalon is actually known as your hypothalamus. Hypo means under. Okay, epithalamus, hypothalamus, thalami are there. So diencephalon's basal portion is known as your hypothalamus, and it is this hypothalamus which is very important as because it is releasing certain hormones, both as that is releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones, which is affecting the master gland of our body, which is the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland, in turn, we all know that it is actually releasing certain trophic hormones which is responsible for the secretion of other endocrine glands in our body. So pituitary gland, since it is called as a master gland, so the secretions of the hypothalamus which is guiding the pituitary gland to secrete its secretion, that is the trophic hormones, so it is actually minding the master. So when somebody is minding the master, then it is called the master of master gland. Okay, so hypothalamus is the master of master gland. Now this is a diagram which is given in your NCERT which I have drawn here. You can see here that this portion is the hypothalamus portion. Now hypothalamus has a stalk. Now this is the stalk. This portion is the stalk. This black color portion is the stalk, and the stalk is known as your infundibulum, with which is hanging this pea-like structure which is the pituitary gland. Okay, and this pituitary gland is further divided into various segments, that is your anterior lobe and posterior lobe, and of course the anterior lobe has its parts and the posterior lobe has its parts which is secreting the hormone. But what we have to learn from here is that the hypothalamus has certain neurosecretory cells. That means these are called the neurons, or nuclei rather. They are called the nuclei, and these nuclei are pouring their secretion directly into the bloodstream, and this system by which it is carried by means of capillaries, and then the capillaries join again to form the vein, and again it divides into capillaries, and then it guides the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary lobe, to secrete its secretion. Then this type of system is known as the portal system, P-O-R-T-A-L, portal system, and this is the portal vein actually, and these are the capillaries, network of capillaries. You can see here also this red color capillaries, and here also red color capillaries are there, and in between is a portal vein, and then it is carrying the things to the various parts of our body by means of the circulation of the blood. Now, this is a portal system which is present in our brain, so it is known as your hypophyseal portal system, portal vein. Similarly, we have a portal vein in our digestive system, which is called as your hepatic portal vein, which is connecting to that of our small intestine. And that is, it is releasing. It is forming at first the network of capillaries, then it is forming that portal vein, that is the hepatic portal vein, and hepatic means it is connected to that of the liver, and then it is again branching into capillaries and it is connected to that of the liver. So there is a connection between that of the secretions of the liver and that of the intestine, and thus it helps in the process of the digestion over there. So portal systems are there in our body. So this is also one of the portal system which is present in our brain, which is carrying the secretions directly from the that is your hypothalamus, and it is pouring it into the anterior pituitary lobe, and then the anterior pituitary lobe is secreting its hormones. Now this can be a releasing hormone or this can be a inhibiting hormone. Now the examples of releasing hormone is what? Gonadotropin releasing hormone. Now this gonadotropin releasing hormone is released from that of the hypothalamus and it goes to the anterior pituitary and it secretes the gonadotropic hormone. Okay, or somatotropic hormone. You will find the abbreviation as GH. Okay, GH means gonadotropin hormone, or GTH or GH, and STH means somatotropic hormone. Meaning is same, that means it is associated with that of the growth of an organism. If this hormone is secreted in excess, that leads to a abnormality in an organism which is known as your gigantism. And abnormal increase in the height of the person takes place, and if it is secreted in less, then it will result into dwarfism. Okay, so dwarfism and gigantism is you can say the abnormality because of hypersecretion and hyposecretion of the somatotropic hormone, and which is again guided by that of your gonadotropin releasing hormone released by that of the hypothalamus. Okay. Now, besides this, there is inhibiting hormones also. Now, inhibiting hormones, what is the example of inhibiting hormone? That is somatostatin. Now, this inhibiting hormone, somatostatin, what does it do? It prevents the formation of the that is your growth hormones by the anterior pituitary lobe. So it has an antagonistic, you can say, effect compared to that of the GnRH. Okay, so this is the releasing hormone and the inhibiting hormone, which is released from the neurosecretory cells or the nuclei of the hypothalamus. Okay, fine. Now the next gland, which is the master gland, that is the pituitary gland, which we have to learn actually. This pituitary gland is externally protected by that of a bony covering, and it is the size of that of a pea, and it is hanging from that of the hypothalamus. Now it is broadly classified into two groups. One is called adenohypophysis and another one is called the neurohypophysis. See, neuro word has come, why? Because here the action is taking place, but the means it is just releasing the secretions which are stored over there, but the secretions are not done there. That is the pars nervosa, which is the neurohypophysis is known as pars nervosa. It is not secreting itself the hormones, that is oxytocin and vasopressin is not secreted by that. Where is it secreted? It is secreted in the hypothalamus. It is carried by means of this nuclei or this neurons and is stored over there in the posterior pituitary lobe and is utilized time to time, means it is released time to time according to the need of the body. Okay, so that is how the neurohypophysis functions, which is known as your pars nervosa. As far as the adenohypophysis is concerned, it is again divided into two parts, although externally it is very difficult to differentiate between that of the pars distalis and pars intermedia. Now pars distalis, it is popularly known as your anterior pituitary, and pars intermedia, it is popularly known as the intermediate lobe of pituitary gland, which is actually, you can say, joined or coinciding with that of the anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary occupies the maximum portion in case of your adenohypophysis. Now this anterior pituitary lobe is secreting 6 trophic hormones. Now what are those hormones? Growth hormone, of course, is that which we have discussed. Besides the growth hormone, it secretes the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, which is stimulating the thyroid gland to release the thyroxine hormone or the calcitonin hormone. So it is actually guiding the thyroid gland to secrete its secretion, that is your TSH. Another is your prolactin. Now prolactin is associated, it's called PRL. Prolactin is associated with the milk secretion. Okay, so that is the hormone secreted by the anterior pituitary lobe. Especially it is functional during the time of pregnancy, later stages of the pregnancy, just before the childbirth, so that there is formation of the milk, so that after the birth of the child can receive the mother's milk. Okay, next is your FSH, LH, follicle stimulating hormone. What is the meaning of follicle here? Means in case of female, the Graafian follicle, the maturation of the Graafian follicle will be under the influence of this follicle stimulating hormone. And LH is luteinizing hormone. Now luteinizing hormone is associated with the process of ovulation. That means rupturing of the follicle will take place, resulting into ejaculation of the egg from that of those follicles, and after that the corpus luteum, that is the remnant of the Graafian follicle, is called corpus luteum. Now this corpus luteum is going to produce the female hormone, which will be under the influence of the luteinizing hormone or LH. Okay, in case of male, it is this follicle stimulating hormone and the LH, they are differently follicle stimulating hormone there is known as your interstitial cell stimulating hormone, okay, ICSH. They are secreting the male hormones androgens, and thus they are contributing towards the sperm formation, sperm maturation, as well as the secondary sexual characteristics, along with that some other hormones. Besides, what else, or what are the other hormones released by that of the anterior pituitary lobe? ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormones, which is guiding the adrenal gland to secrete the secretions, that is the hormones, which can be glucocorticoids, mineralocorticoids, okay, and they are associated with the metabolism of glucose, they are associated with the balancing of the minerals and all those things. So that is under the influence of your ACTH, okay, adrenocorticotropic hormone. So these are the various 6 hormones, trophic hormones released by the anterior pituitary lobe. Now the adenohypophysis, the pars distalis, which is the anterior pituitary lobe, secretes the 6 trophic hormones which we have just now discussed. Besides pars intermedia, which is the intermediate pituitary lobe, it is secreting only one hormone, and the name of that hormone is called as your melanocyte stimulating hormone, MSH. Melanocyte stimulating hormone, it is associated with the secretion of melanin. Melanin is a pigment which controls the skin color. But as such, in human beings, the function of this is not so being established, but in case of rats and all, it has been noticed that if this hormone is secreted in less, then sometimes it may also lead to sterility in the organism. So that has been noticed in case of the lower mammals, like that of the rats or like that of your guinea pigs and all, in the experimental materials rather. Then is our the next gland, which is before that, neurohypophysis, pars nervosa. Neurohypophysis, as I told you, that the word is neuro, okay, so neuro means it's again associated with that neurosecretory cells. It is secreting over there in hypothalamus, carried by means of this nuclei, and is stored over there in the posterior lobe, and from time to time, according to the requirement of the body, they are released into the blood circulation and are carried to the various parts of our body. Now what are the 2 hormones released by the pars nervosa? One is oxytocin and another one is vasopressin. Now oxytocin is the hormone which is associated with milk ejection. Once the milk is formed after the childbirth, the milk has to be ejected. It has to be given to the baby. So the sucking of the that is your milk ejecting glands by that of the baby will result into that is your production of more oxytocin, that will result into more ejection of the milk. So that is how it is associated with that is milk ejection, and also it helps in the contraction of the uterine muscles during the childbirth. Vigorous contraction of the uterine muscles are under the influence of oxytocin, which will be taking place just prior to the childbirth. Just prior to the childbirth, the fetus will release certain cells into the blood of the mother, which will be now carried to the hypothalamus. Now hypothalamus is now going to secrete those oxytocin, and it will be carried to the posterior lobe, and now from the posterior lobe it will be released in the blood, and then it will be going to the uterine muscles, so that contraction will take place, resulting into the expulsion of the child. So that is the function of your oxytocin. And vasopressin, the vasopressin helps in regulating the water in the kidneys. Okay, in the kidney, it is antidiuretic hormone. It is sometimes known as your that vasopressin is sometimes also known as your ADH. Okay, antidiuretic hormone. Diuretic means what? Which is eliminating water from the body. Antidiuretic means what? It will be reabsorbing the water in the renal tubules. It will be balancing the minerals, sodium potassium balance, plus it will be absorbing the water, reabsorbing the water. So that is the function, this ADH. Okay, ADH secretion, if it is if it is secreted, then it will be taking up more water, it will be reabsorbing more water, and if ADH is secreted in less quantity, then more urination will take place. The less secretion of ADH results into a disease which is called as your diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus means here this is a kind of diabetes which is because of the influence of ADH, not because of insulin. Insulin is regulating the sugar level, the blood sugar level, but ADH is regulating the reabsorption of the water. Once it is not secreted in sufficient quantity, excess of urine is passed out. But this urine does not contain the glucose in it. So that is the difference between that of the diabetes because of lack of insulin secretion by the beta cells of the pancreas, which is a mixed gland of course, and what is about this ADH. So that one is called diabetes mellitus, that is because of the deficiency of insulin, and this one, that is which is because of the deficiency of ADH or vasopressin, this is known as diabetes insipidus. Okay, fine. Now the last one which I wanted to take upon, or I wanted to say, as because all these are related to that of the brain, periphery of the brain, all in the, this is located in the dorsal surface of the brain, pineal gland. It is also a size of that of a small p, and it is important in the sense that it is secreting two hormones. In your book it is written only one hormone, that is melatonin, but it is also secreting another hormone called serotonin. Okay, since it is not mentioned, so I am not mentioning it over here, but just for your knowledge I will be telling you about serotonin also. But melatonin is mentioned over there because melatonin is actually regulating the circadian rhythm of our body. Now what is the circadian rhythm? Is that biological clock, means depending upon the daylight or the night, it is regulating the sleeping habits rather. So sleeping habits, when to wake up, or the biological clock is fixed. You will see that once you are habituated about a lifestyle like getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and sleeping at say 10 p.m. at night, this is happening regularly, so your body will be rather programmed in that way. Okay, but during the time of exam, suppose during the time of exam, if you want to increase the span of study, so now you want to get up early in the morning 4 o'clock and you want to sleep late at night, so initial days it will be a problem, but gradually the body will adjust. Now your biological clock or the circadian rhythm will be like that only, and this will be again under the influence of melatonin. And serotonin is associated with our cognitive behavior. Cognitive behavior means our emotions. If that hormone is not secreted in sufficient quantity, that may lead to depression. That might sometimes lead to intelligence problem, recognition problem. So serotonin is also an important hormone which is secreted by that of the pineal gland, which is associated with that of our feelings, emotions. Okay, stress, depression, all those things will be, tackled by that of the serotonin hormone, and melatonin hormone is actually associated with that of our circadian rhythm of our body, which is biological clock. So this is all about today's class of the hypothalamus, master of master gland, then pituitary gland, which is a master gland, and pineal gland, which is very important because it is associated with our sleeping habits, resting, emotions, tackling the emotions, behavioral changes, mood swings, all those things is all associated with that of the pineal gland. So I hope you enjoyed today's class as much as I did in teaching you. With that, we come to the end of today's class. That's all for today's class.